Welcome to Plots Technology Learning Book Club. Today we are reading Forgive Our Parents, Forgiving Ourselves, and we're going to get started here. We are starting at the top of chapter 1. Family Ties That Bind. The pain and heartache you may have suffered in your family may tempt you to put your family behind you once and for all. But leaving home is not the only easy and may not be the healthiest course of action anyways. Brian was clearly in a bad way. By the time he came to see me, he had been hospitalized 4 separate times for the same set of problems: severe depression, alienation, and thoughts of suicide. The hospital programs had all done their best, applying every conceivable form of individual treatment and therapy. Brian would get better and improve enough to be released from the hospital and sent home, but before long his symptoms would reappear and he would be right back where he started. We talked for a long time. I asked him a lot of questions about himself, his feelings, his problems. I also asked him about his family. Much experience has taught me that family patterns sometimes unlock mysterious that have yielded to no other attempts at understanding. One of these things, he told me, was that several years before, just prior to his first hospitalization, his cousin Sheila had tried to commit suicide. Her father was a police officer, and she had taken his gun and gone to an open field and shot herself. The attempt had failed, and she was left permanently handicapped as a result. Brian spoke bitterly about the way his family blamed him for what happened to his cousin. It seemed that a week before she tried to kill herself, Sheila had talked to Brian. About how hopeless she felt, how alone and depressed. Brian had been alarmed. He had asked her if she was contemplating suicide. She had insisted vehemently that she was not. Then a week later, she made her futile but destructive attempt. When the family heard about Brian's conversation with Sheila, they were outraged. Surely she should have seen what was coming. Surely he should have insisted that Sheila seek help. Surely should have someone had told what was going on. The fact that Sheila had specifically denied that she was thinking of suicide meant nothing. It was all his fault, or so the family seemed to think. And so in time did Brian. No one had ever seemed to blame her father for leaving his gun carelessly available for her to take. Brian was only 15 years old at the time and could not possibly have been expected to recognize his cousin's cry for help. But he felt responsible for what happened. His parents, his aunts and uncles, they were right. It was his fault. He was to blame for Sheila's tragic condition. The feelings of remorse, guilt were almost enough to quite literally drive him crazy. During the course of our time together, I was able to point out to Brian the pattern that seemed to have been developed regarding his problems. When he went into the hospital, or of course he was away from his family, he got better. But when he got out and went back home to live, it was only a matter of months until his family's attitude towards him pushed him back into despair and depression. I talked to Brian about dysfunctional family systems, generational patterns of behavior and relationships within families that work to make us unhealthy rather than healthy. I talked to him about the roles that members of the family take on and the effects that those roles can have on them. In particular, I talked to him about the role of the scapegoat and the one onto whom all other projects and I screwed up. The one onto whom all other project their own feelings and guilt and shame. The more we talked, the clearer it became to Brian and to me that his problems stem, for the most part, from some unhealthy behaviors and attitudes in his family. In time, we were able to identify the number of family patterns and dynamics. Brian had to change the way he responded to these patterns if he was to remain healthy. There were other factors, of course. The treatment and therapy provided in the hospital played an important role, but in Brian's case, family issues were the key. As we worked to resolve them, his other problems became more manageable and his life more stable. Children don't know what causes their misery. In fact, children don't realize their dysfunction home is abnormal. Even physically abused kids don't realize while young that normal parents don't beat their kids. They think that there is no other way to live. Nancy Curtis, Beyond Survival. And that's going to end our book reading for today of Forgiving Our Parents, Forgiving Ourselves. We'll continue halfway down on page 19. And the subject of this page is Family Ties That Bind, ? All right, I hope you guys enjoy book club. Thank you so much for blessing and being with me here today doing book club. It means a lot to me, my business, building and fostering that human connection. And we're just going to summarize with what we've read today so far. I find it so fascinating and just so crazy at the same time how our environment can change how we live. And to seek that right help, to be able to have the right tools for our family, our friends, our loved ones, that it's not their fault, but people have perceptions in their heads about how certain things are. And when we change our environment, our life can change. So, I mean, either you escape your environment or you have the right tools and resources to be able to handle that environment that, you know, might not be the best thing to be in, right? So if you're, even if you have the right tools to handle, you know, that environment, if it gets to a point where those tools aren't working because you feel like the other person in whatever scenario, let's say you're in a very committed relationship through a spouse, that can have drastic implications if they don't understand where you're coming from. And that's why therapy and talking about our feelings, or just talking about our feelings in general, if they're receptive to that, is just so important. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed our talk today, and I look forward to talking to you on Monday in our book, Forgiving Our Parents, Forgiving Ourselves. We did run a little bit late. I was going to do it last night, but we had some things come up, so thank you for joining me this morning. You guys have a blessed day.